Here we are on this beautiful Saturday morning, pulling the F-100, Collings Foundation F-100F out of the Vietnam War Flight Museum hangar and getting it ready to go up on our flight today. So as you can imagine, you know, a lot of people think you just pull these things out, you fire them up and you go fly. But people have no idea how many months of work goes into keeping each and every one of these aircraft alive. I mean, just one of them would be a project, and we have several of them. And of course, everyone asks me, well, why don't you get footage of you pulling the airplane out, putting it back in? And sometimes I do, but usually I'm the one on the tug. Thank goodness we got Chris back here, Jordan and Barry, and all the usual suspects helping us out. And hopefully we'll be firing it up in the next few minutes. I got a couple of new GoPros plus an Insta360, and I'm gonna film this whole thing. The goal is to get some audio and everything as well. Hopefully everything will work, and you'll hear a start up to shutdown plus the flight, so stay tuned. Let me know what you think. Alright, so what you're seeing here is I'm putting on these leg straps that actually are part of the ejection seat system that's in this F-100. It no longer has the Dart system. It actually has a Martin Baker system. So those actually attach to the ejection seat and pull my legs in the event of an ejection. As we're getting strapped in here, you can see Jordan's up front helping Rick, and Chris is in the back helping me. We're just making sure that all the straps are on correctly, the harness is on good and tight, and all of the ejection seat pins and safety pins are removed so that the ejection seats are going live by the time we close the canopy and taxi out. Okay, we're all strapped in and ready to start. We see a beautiful Stearman flying over thanks to the Lone Star Flight Museum. They're giving rides that day and watching us while we watch them. We like supporting each other. And here we are, we got the huffer running, and if you look closely, you'll see the air hose bounce when Rick asks for the air to be supplied to the engine, and that's indication that air is going in, spooling us up. If you look even closer, you'll see the gear doors close and the stabilizer move as hydraulic power comes online due to the engine spooling up. Take a look. Now that we are at a steady idle, you'll see Rick call for run-up. He's going to run the engine up a little bit just to make sure the generator comes online and latches. Then he'll pull it back down to idle and ask for Jordan to come and remove the upper hose and the electrical power. Here's the ground crew removes all the ground service equipment and just cleans the ramp up a little bit. We're running all of our checks inside the cockpit, making sure that everything's looking good from inside, and including full range of motion of some of the controls, especially the stabilizer. And as you can see, we left the ladder on the back for the rear cockpit. That's just so Chris and Jordan can climb up and get ready to bleed the hydraulic systems as we are up in the front steering the controls for them, as you'll see here shortly. So like I said, we got Chris and Jordan up on the back of the aircraft, and you can see if you look closely, the controls are moving ever so slightly. We're just slightly stirring the stick just to keep some of the positive pressure going on the hydraulic system as Chris actually bleeds each system. So we can switch up in the cockpit which system he's working on or which system we're looking at, and we're just in communication with him via the headsets while he bleeds those systems. Once he gets finished with that, he'll take one final look, and then they will start buttoning up the panels, and we'll be ready to go. One more thing I'd like to point out is, as you can see, an aircraft like the F-100 is just not one of those aircraft that you can just pull out on a Saturday morning and decide to go flying. You need a crew of savvy people. It takes time. It actually takes days to get the thing ready for a flight sometimes. And then, of course, you can see how long it takes just to start it up, get the system properly plugged, check everything out, all before you're even ready to leave the chalk. So thank goodness we have these awesome volunteers around to help us, and we just couldn't do it without them. So here we go. It's about time to start buttoning up the panels. All right, buttoned up, and Barry's going to remove the ladder, and we're going to start checking the speed brakes and flap systems. Speed brake looks good. Now we'll go flaps to full, flaps to up, and then flaps to takeoff or half. Since the F-100 doesn't have a flap indicator inside, all we have is the handle. The flaps are either up, they're at half, or they're full down. So what we have Chris doing is checking to make sure that in each of those positions the flaps are doing what they're supposed to do, and also making sure there's no leaks and making sure they're symmetrical. So that's what Chris is checking, he's verifying, and then we'll make sure we taxi out with flaps at half for takeoff. The last thing you do in an F-100 before you taxi out is you have your crew chief grab your nose gear pin and toss it up to you, and you keep it on you or in the cockpit with you so that you can throw it down to him when you land, and you can put it in before you shut the aircraft down, just to make sure the nose wheel is down and locked with hydraulics and the pin before you can take hydraulic pressure off the aircraft. All right, now we've checked all the flight controls and nose wheel steering and everything else. We've done all the taxi checks. Now we're ready to disconnect from Chris, say adios, and taxi out and go have some fun. As we call ground for taxi instructions, just wanted to point out that this is an old J57 turbojet engine that's pretty big for the time, and it's very susceptible to compressor stall, especially at lower power settings. So as we start to taxi out, you will hear Rick be very gentle adding power to this aircraft to avoid compressor stall. It's really an art. It's an awesome engine, but you've got to be gentle. as we taxi away here, you can see how powerful this thrust is just above idle for the slowest taxi speed we can get. We're still blasting the ramp. We're doing the best we can, but the nozzle is pointed down at the ramp, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it but be aware and try to do your best to not blast anybody. So that's what we're doing here. I'm taxiing the jet from the back here, as you can see, and there's just very limited forward visibility here. So I'm really relying on Rick and also leaning as far over as I can to see in front of me. Sorry about the wind today. It was a little windy out on the ramp, and we had to taxi all the way down to the beginning of the runway, which is quite a long ways away from our museum, but I wanted to give you a little idea of what you're going to see on the takeoff. As you'll see, we'll spool up here, we'll go into full afterburner, takeoff. Once we rotate and get the gear in the well, we will accelerate to a little over 230 knots, and we'll pull the power out of afterburner. You'll see the airplane start smoking, and you'll hear the change in exhaust. So check it out, it's really awesome. 6,000 pounds more thrust in afterburner. Pulling it out of afterburner, you're left with only 10,200 pounds of thrust, which is still plenty. Enjoy. Now it's time to depart the pattern, head out towards the practice area where we're going to check a few systems, check the slats, and also, of course, have a little bit of fun. All right, I'm going to take you aboard. We're going to go for a little ride in the F-100. Now that that part of the fun's over, it's time to head back towards the bar. Here we are headed back towards Ellington Field. As we get in close to Ellington here, as you can see, we're setting up on the 45 to join the left downwind to entry here. And yes, I get a million questions about this. This is the vapor from the air conditioner and the high humidity as we descend down. Totally normal. A lot of these old aircraft actually do this. The A4 I fly will actually spit little bits of ice at you during the flight, which is kind of nice, but it does get you a little bit wet. But yes, it is not smoke. It's normal. It's vapor. It's fine. It does kind of restrict your visibility in some cases though, but anyway, just wanted to let y'all know this is normal. All right, now we're back for the most exciting part of the flight, which is landing this beautiful F-100. You can see that little speck out there on left base. That's us coming in for a full stop landing at Ellington. We are going to max perform the brakes, make sure they're all nice and good and working great. Then we will deploy the drag chute. Maximum speed for the drag chute is 180 knots. We never deploy it over 150 knots. On this landing, we will actually wait till about 100 knots to deploy it. And for those of you curious, we are coming in at about 190 knots. We'll touch down at about 170, maybe 165 at the slowest. As we're taxiing in, you can see Rick is actually keeping that parachute, that drag chute, bloomed out behind us so that it's not dragging and scuffing it up on the tarmac and the taxiway. Also keeps it behind you and not snagging taxiway lights and stuff like that. So it's a heck of a technique. It's not easy, especially taxiing downwind with the wind behind you, keeping the thing bloomed, also keeping your taxi speed under control and your brakes from overheating. So it's definitely got some technique and some art to it. As you'll see when we make the final turn into where we're parking at the museum, he will go ahead and let it collapse, and then we'll drag it just a little bit of ways to our parking spot. Then after we shut down, we will detach it and then get it ready to repack and reinstall it. And as you'll see here, as soon as we park, Rick will drop the nose gear pin to Chris. We'll get the thing chalked and we'll prepare it to shut down. All right, one of the last things that we need to do before we shut down is we actually need to run the engine up just a little bit to scavenge the oil, make sure it's all nice and clear and ready for the shutdown. And that's what you're going to hear Rick do next. So listen to that beautiful J57 right before we shut it down and spool it down. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. We had a lot of work went into it. I learned some more about the GoPros, learned some more about the airplane, and we'll answer all your questions in the comments, of course. But we had a blast. It was awesome. Thank you to all the volunteers that come out and make this stuff worth it. And it makes it go. You know, this stuff wouldn't even fly if we didn't have volunteers. Yeah, it takes money and time and all that, but it really takes the volunteers. It takes all of it. So thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. And now it's time to restack the hangar.